Hello and welcome to another video tutorial. In this video tutorial I want to show you how we can create a connection between the cloud-based data warehouse Snowflake and the software ArcGIS Pro. And we're going to do that connection in a way that lets us add a map layer in ArcGIS that is based on the data in Snowflake and have that map layer update as soon as we update the data in Snowflake. So it's going to be a live connection, a live feed. There are a few things that you have to get right if you want to do this properly, and so I'll go through them in this tutorial. The first simple thing is, do we have the right drivers for that connection? So this connection between Snowflake and ArcGIS relies on a driver on your computer. So the first thing to do would be to check your programs and features, see if you have a driver called the Snowflake driver. If you don't, that's an easy fix. You can just go up here to help in the Snowflake web app that I have behind me. Go to download ODBC driver, and you can follow the instructions from either of these downloads depending if you have a Windows or a Mac or a Linux. That's the first step. The next step, before we even start in GIS, we need to create a table in Snowflake that has the right data type. So what I mean by that is ArcGIS is looking for geospatial data, and so we have to set up our Snowflake data in a geospatial way. It won't work if we just have normal columns as floats called latitude and longitude. If we're working in latitude and longitude, we need to set them up using Snowflake's geography column type. So I'm just going to create a table from scratch in Snowflake, and I'm just going to copy a line of code that I've already done to do that. So that line of code I've just copied in there. We're going to create a table that sits within our example data database in locations schema, which you can see on the left here. I'm going to give that table the name GIS example. And that table is going to have two columns. The first one is a name, so each point is just going to have a string as a name. And the second column is called location, and location, you can see, has been given the column type geography. And when we insert data into geography, I'll tell you a bit more about what that means, but for now I'll just run that line and check that in example data we now have this table called GIS example, and it has an empty row called name and location. So the next thing to do is add some data to that table. So I'm going to copy and paste in an insert data command. So with insert into our table, in the name and location columns, I've inserted A and B just as the name of 2 points, and also this geography format data type. So what I've written here is point, which indicates this is just going to be a point. We also have the option of lines and polygons, but for the simplest example I'm going to do point. I'll paste a link in the description below if you want to look more into doing lines and polygons, but for now we're just going to put 2 points into the table, so 2 points in space that have a longitude and a latitude coordinate. So point A has a longitude of 172.3 and a latitude of -41.2, and point B has slightly different coordinates. So I'm just going to run that and check it's worked. Great. So your data to be spatially recognized by GIS should look like this. Now let's go to ArcGIS. I've just got an empty project here, and so the first thing we want to do to get access to our Snowflake data is to create that connection between Snowflake and ArcGIS. So to do that, we just have to go up to the Map tab here, click Add Data, and then I'm going to add a query layer. This gives me the new query layer pop-up, and to create a new connection to a database I can click this button here, and it pops up with this database connection. A lot of my fields are already filled in because I've made this type of connection before, but I'll go through each one and where you can get what you need to fill each of these in. The first one is the database platform. That gives you a few options, and Snowflake should be one of them. So just click Snowflake. The next is the server address. So you'll see the first bit of mine has been blurred out, but basically you can get that from the web app. So you just copy from the URL address up the top, just after https:// start copying right through to the end of .com. And that's what you add to the server. Next is authentication type. Different types of database connections have different types of authentications. For ArcGIS, for Snowflake, when I'm making this video, only user is allowed. So user means we have to submit a username and password to create a connection. Another type of authentication could just be a Windows authentication, which would recognize your login details. So for now, we have to put a username and password. My username has been blurred here. I can also just enter my password. Those username and passwords are just the same that I would use to log into Snowflake. Click Save Username and Password if you want those to be remembered with your connection. That's quite useful if you want to publish your layer to ArcGIS online. You'd want your username and password to travel with it. The next one, the next three things are role, database, and warehouse, and all three of those can also be acquired from the web app. So role, database, and warehouse can be found. Here is my role. Here is my database, example data, and here is my warehouse, compute WH. Cool. So after that, we've got all our credentials sorted. I can click OK. Establish a connection. So it's just given this connection a name, Snowflake SDE. Oh, we can actually give it another name. Just call it Snowflake connection. If I click list of tables here, it will give me a list of tables that was in the database that I specified the name of in my Snowflake SDE connection. So I've got three tables in here. Location data. Oh, GIS example is the one that I want, sorry. If I click GIS example, we can check that our column names are in there and the type has been recognized properly. Yes, text and all the all-important type geometry, which GIS is going to recognize as geospatial data. So further down here, we have our query, where we can type a query in the format that the database or the data warehouse that we're using recognizes. So I can write in Snowflake SQL, select all from and to a shortcut to get the whole name or the whole path of the table. Just double click there, we'll get it. We'll get it here. So let GIS Pro discover the spatial properties of the layer. It's hopefully going to recognize the geometry column that we have there. Creating a materialized view of the query layer will essentially create a view in the ArcGIS local database that you have. That could be quite handy if you have large data sets in Snowflake that you're trying to bring across with every query. So a view would just help have a local copy of that saved. For this, we only have 2 rows of data, so that's not going to be a problem for us. I'm not going to tick that. So we'll click Validate now, and it will check if it has everything it needs. The minimum requirement should just be an identity column, which is our name, and a location column. So it seems fine with all that. I'm going to click Next. So the unique identifier for each row, in this case, is going to be name. We only have 2 points. Those are either going to be called A or B. And it has recognized from our spatial properties that we're putting point data in, and we're using latitudes and longitudes in WGS 1984. So I'll click Finish now. And give it a second. Cool, and just like that, it's added the points to our map. We can label those points A and B. So the connections work so far. Now we want to test if we update Snowflake, will it update the layer in ArcGIS? So let's go back to Snowflake. I'll insert another point like this. I'll just copy that row and I'll call this C. Just change a couple of the numbers here. So maybe I'll put that at 171 and negative 40. Get rid of that. Oh. Run that line. Just check that it went through okay. We have a point C here. We'll go back to GIS. And just by changing the zoom of the window, it's triggered an update and we have a point C here. Any more locations about the connection you can find if I go to database. You can see I have my Snowflake SDE, and underneath that, all my tables I have access to. This table symbol means this is just tabular data that isn't recognized in a geospatial way. If we have this rounded square here, that means we can literally just pull this data into the map. So I hope that's been useful. If you have any questions about creating a connection between Snowflake and GIS, don't hesitate to add a comment, and I hope that helps. Thank you.